Hey everyone, it's Christy. It is Sunday. It is Weekend Winters. Hope you are doing well. It is good to have you here. Thank you for joining me. Before we start off talking about anything else, I think it's worth acknowledging the tragedy in the U.S. when it comes to the incompetence of the Trump administration's handling of COVID-19. The United States is basically on the cusp of passing 100,000 deaths reported, not cases. Their cases are in the millions, 1.3, 1.5 million. That's a huge, we tend to focus, was it like the quote about one death is a tragedy and a statistic, a million deaths is a statistic. I think it's hard for us to get our minds around 100,000 people gone since the end of January, start of February in the United States. I was born outside a city in Wisconsin called Stevens Point, which at the time I was growing up had about 24,000 people in it. That is like my city being wiped out and 3 others exactly like it, just being completely decimated of its entire population. I think, and it's so I just want to take a moment with this grim milestone. It's so unnecessary. It was so unnecessary. And tragic. And the way that also Trump decided to fly flags at half-mast, he announced it Thursday. It started on Friday. Then it was going to go through Saturday and Sunday, which people aren't even like going to public buildings like the post office or City Hall on Saturdays and Sundays. And then it ends. And then on Monday, they have the flag lowered to half-mast for Memorial Day. So it's just like, it's not even like there's, I remember when 9/11 happened and George Bush said he ordered the flags to be lowered to half-mast for 3 days. And I was outraged because I didn't think that was enough. Like for over 3,000 people, I felt like we should have at least spent a week in mourning. 3 days just felt shallow and inappropriate. And he actually did that during the middle of the week. Pretty sure it started on like a Monday. So at least it was something that people were doing, government buildings. It was sort of like a thing people were going out to do when they open up their businesses or whatever. And this, over a weekend announced with 24 hours. Anyway, a grim milestone. And we are sadly nowhere near the end for the American outbreak. I mean, I just have to compare it to Germany. I checked again today on the numbers, and Germany still has under 9,000 deaths in a nation of like 85, 88 million people. And so this isn't beyond anyone's control. This isn't a problem that's too big to handle. These are deaths due to, I mean, in some ways I almost feel like Trump should be charged with manslaughter, reckless endangerment, I think. Oh, I don't need my headphones on anymore. There's no music. And it squishes my hair down. So, all right. Yeah, reckless endangerment and indifference to human life, I think are pretty much the things that are going on. So, hello, people in the chatsies. I saw a couple of people doing some chat. Got a couple of viewers. And, Rory Cats, you were like, hello, what's all this then? There was an old TV show in the UK called Allo, and it was about, I think, the French resistance during German occupation of France. This was like a 1970s kind of show, sort of the same attempts, similar to Dad's Army, to turn the horrors of World War II into a sit-based comedic entertainment show. And it was called Allo because it was a bunch of English people doing really, really bad. I don't know if they're all English. British people doing bad French accents. So it's just a reference to that. Don't worry about it, Striped Mongoose. We haven't really started too much. Don't worry about being late. You can always rewind. And hey, Sib Wolf. Hope you are doing well. So hey, Lucky Wanderer and Rory Cats, Sib Wolf, and Striped Mongoose. Good to see you in the chat. You are channeling Python. Yeah, that would make sense. I could see. I think they have some like kind of hello jokes in there as well. All right. yeah, the world is horrific. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. And it's kind of hard to just not let that absorb everything. And it does deserve some time, but as you guys know on my channel and also with the happy hour, you guys get enough COVID news everywhere else, so we try to focus on stuff that is not COVID related. And in this episode today, I want to go back. I didn't want to have to go back to the Tara Reade story, or Tara, I guess depends on how you want to pronounce it. However, and no one's forcing me to go back to the story, but since I had covered it before, and the developments that happened this week fundamentally shifted a lot of the dynamics of the situation, I brought it up again. Hopefully, we're coming to the end of our Tara Reade coverage, because I think the story, well, and other than sort of incidentally in her life as things fall out for her, will continue, but other than that, I think that this story is kind of going the way of the dodo bird when it comes to at least, mainstream media. Fringe outlets will, of course, always take it up, but it's pretty hard to see how this story has legs in the mainstream media going forward. So let me explain why. But first, let me have some delicious coffee out of my Hamilton mug. Oh, did you guys see the news about Hamilton? I think I might have mentioned it last time, that Hamilton was filmed in 2016 with the original Broadway cast. Hi, Sophia. Delayed there, Sophia. There was they filmed the original Broadway cast performing the musical, and they had intended to release it into theaters in October of next year. But because of the pandemic, Disney just decided to kick it over to Disney Plus, and now they're releasing it in July, so I can sit with my Hamilton mug. You can't really see. There's the Hamilton. I don't know if you can actually see it. I'm a little bit hesitant to put it closer because I don't want to get coffee on my keyboard. There's my, from the original Broadway, the London cast on its first run in London. My little souvenir. Really, that was just an excuse to drink more coffee. All right. Let's have a little talk about what happened this week with Tara Reade. So before I do that, I guess it's going to be important. My hair is getting so long from being on lockdown. So yeah, just a little more fluff stories before we get going. I did attempted my own haircut thing, which went off a little less well than the last time. I've now got a serious buzz cut. I don't think you guys can probably see that. Which I mostly did alright, but anyway. Yeah, so I'm just checking my look in the mirror and noticing, wow, my hair is really getting long on the sides. Okay, let's focus here, Christy, on things that people actually give a crap about, which is not how you look on camera. Okay, so yes, let's give you guys a little update. So for those of you who are still playing, who've not been keeping up with this story, and I think you probably have, but let me just set the background for anyone who does need backup, need to know what's been happening. Last year in April-ish, spring of 2019, there was a sort of a Me Too based story emerging around Joe Biden. And the story around Joe Biden, I think it's important to get the facts on this right, is that women were coming forward saying that they felt like he touched them in ways that were just too familiar and made them feel uncomfortable. Now, to my knowledge, I can't think of anyone who called it sort of like sexual harassment, sexual assault, boundary crossing behavior. I don't know. I know for sure one woman has said, even though she came forward and still stands behind her story about bodily autonomy, she didn't feel sexually harassed. And and on this issue, I think it irritates me to no end when, especially cis men, try to appropriate Joe Biden's behavior and label boundary crossing touching as being no different from other forms of like actual sexual assault. Because if, as a woman, I can tell, like, from my experience of dealing with a lot of heterosexual men of a variety of ages, there is a big difference between, let's say, an older guy who comes over and lays his hand on your arm or like rubs your back, like, sort of like, or puts a hand on your shoulder for a really long time. That's different in terms of a form of paternalism than sliding up behind me and grabbing my boobs. One is criminal, the boob one, and the other one is just like a bit of boundary crossing, but not actually illegal. Right? And so women navigate these things all the time. And we have to, and I'm not just, like women, I'm sure other people in some situations of power, but let's go with I'm just going to talk about, let's say, my experience. When you have these situations, you have to always be judging the extent to which you want to put up a fight or just let it slide. I mean, women have to make these calculations all the time. And so to see a bunch of guys who've never had to navigate men touching their bodies in any other way than like a slap on the arm, or maybe if they're playing a sport together, a friendly tap on the butt. But in terms of actually being sexualized in that way, having to navigate the difference between someone who's just kind of like got his hand on your shoulder and is rubbing your arm because he wants to pretend like he's your dad and he understands you or something, and a guy who puts his hand on your thigh and slides it up toward your crotch, very different. And so a lot of, I think there was a justification for Tara Reade's later accusation based on a lot of, I'm going to just call it out, men who were appropriating this problem that is experienced not by them at all and trying to mansplain to other women how Joe Biden is creepy because he did this boundary crossing, as if we are idiots and we don't understand this and we don't have to navigate this world our entire lives. All right. That story came out in last year, around springtime, because along with other women who had come forward saying Joe Biden had touched me and I felt uncomfortable, also some women who came forward said Joe Biden touched me and I understood what he was doing and I didn't feel violated. So, I mean, it runs the gamut in terms of how people interpret his touches. This is also what makes it just better for guys. If you don't have a relationship with a woman, just don't touch her. You just treat her like you would another man, right? Because, you're not going to, it's just safer that way. You don't open yourself up for these kind of charges or misinterpretations, right? I can say that actually, like, touching, like going and thanking somebody, and also when I'm thanking them, putting my hand on their arm here, for me, I understand why I that makes a human connection, right? I want to not only just sort of say thank you, but I want to connect with them, but in a safe way. And back in the day, like, there wasn't quite an understanding of ways in which men with power can touch women in ways that aren't friendly and cooperative and equal, but are a little bit domineering. Anyway, women came forward saying these things, and one of the women that came forward was Tara Reade. She gave an account to a lot of journalists. Ended up that most of them did not run with her story because they couldn't vet it. And then she ended up publishing an editorial, I should say, in a local paper, and a local paper documented her account about how it was not sexual misconduct and she didn't feel sexualized, but she did feel dominated and she was uncomfortable with this touching. Fast forward. So the idea here is that Tara Reade's story at the time was in line with what other women were saying. And that was what kind of gave credibility to the previous set of complaints, was that people were consistent about the situation, what had happened, and what they felt uncomfortable about. And Tara Reade mimicked all of that in her discussions. Fast forward to a year later, and she comes she comes forward in a podcast interview with Katie Halper. I guess it's worth saying it now. Having 3 days before the podcast with Katie Halper gone back to an article she published in April of 2019, where she said things like, this is not a story about sexual misconduct, saying this is not only a story about sexual misconduct, and making other substantive edits to the work to make it seem more like she was being sexually exploited than the original article wording would have given you the impression. She specifies things about like the kinds of men that were at the event she was expected to serve, even though so the edits she made were substantive, changed the tone, and actually went from exculpating Biden from an accusation into accusing him of something. And then 3 days after that, she went on the Katie Halper podcast and told a story that now conformed with this new version. And I should also say, this is what set off red alarms with me when it came out, was when I was informed through the research into these changes on her 2019 article. What really stuck in my jaw was the fact that she made those edits and then she left the original 2019 date on it. She did not declare her edits and she did not post an update. This article has been revised in 2020 to give more details. So this to me, and again, she has a degree from a law program. So she doesn't get, like, my assumption she's not smart enough to know that she should have done that. I respect her enough to think that she knew proper referencing, because she graduated from a law degree program. Tara Reade changed her accusation into being penetrated with a finger by Biden in a hallway. And there's been a lot of discussion about her claims subsequent to that. One of the problems, so Biden, I should say, violent, sexy dancing. I'm trying to wrap this up quickly. Biden has denied it, and he's also said, please open up my records in terms of the Senate. He's directed the Senate office, he gives permission to release any, not only complaint by Reade, but any other complaints in his files. Now, the Senate Personnel Office is refusing to do that, but at the end of the day, there are enough problems with the Tara Reade story, because the other thing about this, I should say, is she had tweeted out that she had filed a complaint against Biden. And then when Biden said, open up my records, she said, well, actually, it wasn't a formal complaint that I filed, and I don't think I mentioned sexual harassment, and I think I just filled out a form. So this is where we come to the problem with the ever-changing story of Tara Reade, and her, and the fact that the people who are vouching for her and testifying as to what happened are also changing their stories. So let's go over now. Sophia, short bobs are the best. Okay, right. I think I can put a little bit. Oh no, I'm gonna zoom you guys up in the chat size-wise here a little bit, and then we'll look at, because I don't want to have to squint when I look at your text. It's just, I'm lazy. I just want to be able to see it. Okay, this came out, is it yesterday? This came out yesterday, and it's a very good article. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't gotten more play online, but there's a lot of other things competing for people's attention, like Joe Biden's gaffe on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, which maybe we'll get to before the end of the show. But if you haven't checked it out, I would definitely recommend you read this article written by the Washington Post. And I think it's particularly helpful because it's a good resource that sort of summarizes all the problems. So I guess I should back up a little bit. Tara Reade was having problems establishing credibility with her story in 2019. Vox author Laura, what's her name? I can't remember. She was just on the Chris Hayes All In on Friday night discussing this. But she wrote about how she was in contact with Tara Reade a year ago, but she couldn't, there were just things about her story that were inconsistent or she couldn't verify. And as a professional journalist, she didn't publish something that she couldn't back up with evidence. Because if you're publishing things that you don't have evidence for, you're not a journalist, you're like writing for the National Enquirer. And also you can open yourself up to libel suits as well if you can't substantiate your reporting. It's a good idea to have, a high criteria that is consistent across stories according to journalistic standards. So she changed her story and she got a lot of play inside sort of like off Broadway, off mainstream media outlets. She was on the Katie Halper podcast, and then she also did an interview with Megyn Kelly on YouTube. okay? But she turned down, or she canceled an appearance on CNN that I'm aware of. And I think she might have also canceled a Fox appearance after Biden's denials. And as people began to look more into it, more into her claims, they found increasing numbers of problems with her descriptions, and then she would modify her accounts of things to take into account the kinds of criticism she was getting, and so it was just all getting really fuzzy. Let's first talk about the inconsistencies in her story, and then we're going to discuss, and by we, I mean me, I'm going to discuss the other problems with her credibility that emerged just this week. And one of the things I want us to think about is this very gray area about at what point does a person's character credibility become something that's disqualifying. So I'll just summarize it. It's been pointed out to me, and this is not pointed out so much as people mention it while they're talking about this issue, and I acknowledge it's a valid point. People who have told lies in the past, or people who have manipulated people in the past, or people who don't have a perfect record can be victims of of assaults. I also, because I'm trying to keep my Sunday stuff monetized, I have to really be careful about the language I use, so it's kind of a G-rated version of this discussions. If you've noticed, I'm trying to think about my language and describe things accurately but not explicitly. Right. And because it's not as if you've had that happen in the past, you're protected from these kinds of assaults or from harassment. And so bad, imperfect people can be victims. That is completely true, because how many of us are actually perfect? If something happened to us, think about it in your own life. Like if you were victimized by someone and you wanted to hold them accountable, just think about all the things that they could possibly dig up about you. I mean, even if it's not criminal or even bad, it could be used in a way and weaponized in a way to embarrass you, because this is what people who are accused of things do. They attack their accuser, or at least that's certainly part of a defense strategy on that. And I mean, for instance, I have a divorce in my record. It was back when I was in my 20s, but someone could dig that up and try to say, oh, she was divorced. I got a parking ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. Oh, and that's actually true. I said, was it a ticket? Yeah, it was like a $10 fine, which I wrote out to the Gestapo, the Oshkosh Gestapo, police, traffic enforcement or whatever, because I was pretty irritated about the way I was treated. But anyway, and anything that could embarrass you, that stuff does get dragged out and will get dragged out. And so at what point is someone's credibility not relevant for their accusations? And at what point does their credibility become relevant to their accusations? And I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer. I think a lot of this is probably people will decide on their own what feels right to them, where a line is. But I think as we do Me Too and move forward, that is something that we have to acknowledge is a struggle. I don't think there's a solution, because every case will be different. But we have to acknowledge that no victim will be perfect, but that doesn't mean that a victim has to be perfect to be believed. It's not easy, so I'm going to be honest. All right, so let's have a look at the inconsistencies in Reade's reporting, because it is, in this case, and as I've always said, I don't really care about her opinions on Putin. I don't really care about who she supported in the primary. And I call her a liar now because she's a documented liar. And especially when you lie to people about the allegation that you're making by manipulating a prior text without declaring it. That was when she lost me. So I guess in the sake of full disclosure, I don't believe Tara Reade because she's lied to me. She's tried to deceive a bunch of people about this specific event. And there's enough questions around her accounts that I don't find them compelling in terms of overcoming the things that I can see that she's done to change her story. So these are my personal takes. But if we want to summarize them, I think it's quite useful. So this is by Amber Phillips. Reporters at marquee national news outlets have devoted significant time over the last couple of months investigating Tara Reade and her allegation that former Vice President Joe Biden, now the presumptive Democratic nominee, SA'd her. And you get that what SA is? Can we speak in that kind of code? Because, again, YouTube. In 1993, throughout their reporting on her, a pattern of inconsistencies has emerged in Reade's accounts, and several stories in the last week in particular have raised questions about her credibility in other areas of her life. All right, I guess I'm going to have to deal with this now because it's part of the story. Friday afternoon, New Eastern Standard Time, Tara Reade got hit with a pretty big negative slam or setback, if you want to say. She was getting pro bono work from an attorney who has SA and harassment experience, and was going to do their work for free, and volunteered to help her 2 weeks ago. And mostly what that attorney seems to have done in the time that he's been her attorney is to complain that Joe Biden won't open up all his papers, even though Joe Biden has directed the Senate Human Resources Personnel Office archives to open them up. And Joe Biden cannot tell the University of Delaware to open up his papers. They have them in their archive, and they're processing them. So mostly, from my recollection, the only thing that Douglas Wigdor did was attack Joe Biden on an archive record, asking him to basically open up his public records in case someone from Human Resources had sent an email had sent a letter saying that Tara Reade filed a intake form about not feeling like there's a, like she was asked to do a duty in the office and she didn't do it, and then she was being reprimanded or it was being punitively treated because of it. And the archives aren't there for personnel issues. So anyway, I don't really know that Douglas Wigdor is doing a good job for her, if I'm honest. Yeah, so I've got two things going on today. I actually have three. Sorry, just random switch here. I have 3 liquids in front of me. I have my tomato juice with a little bit of Tabasco sauce and Worcestershire, which is basically my replacement for breakfast. And then water, because hydration is important, and my coffee. This is a ridiculous number of drinks, but this is what I like. These are my small pleasures. Leave me alone. All right. A Washington Post learned on Friday that Reade is no longer a client of the law firm that had been representing her. Douglas Wigdor, a high-profile Me Too lawyer, did not give a reason for dropping the case. Though he made a point in saying in the statement, the decision is by no means a reflection on whether the allegations, and I'm going to unquote here, the allegations are correct. And it was interesting to me to see how much time in that letter was devoted to explaining how nothing about this should make you think Joe Biden is a good person. And then there was 0 on why they just dropped her like a hot potato very suddenly after allegations that we're going to look at come up. I'm going to tend to not read out the Wigdor statement, because most of the stories that covered this were just his press release, and his press release is just trashing Joe Biden, and yet he's dumping his client. So you can't, if you give a whole letter saying here's why I'm not dropping my client, it just makes you think you're talking, so you don't have to say why you are dropping your client. And that's what's really interesting, not why you're not dropping your client, but why you are. But of course Douglas wouldn't say that. All right, so what has been the recent reporting uncovered about Reade and her story that's pertinent to her allegation against Biden? Let's review. Hey, I have a question for you guys. Am I the only one who, when you're typing out Biden on Twitter and stuff, that you type Budden? I keep, maybe it's because my nails are really super long and I need to get them trimmed back and properly done. But I keep typing Buden. And it always autocorrects happily to Biden, but if ever that goes out, just know that that's a problem with my predictive text. No, my inability to type, I should say. On the allegation. I'm all over the place. All right. Yep. You guys are being quiet in the chat, but that's okay because I'm not really looking at you, so that's fine. All right. On the allegation, PBS NewsHour interviewed 74 Biden staff, most of the women, who said Biden was respectful to them. He's not on a list of creepy senators young women were told to avoid. Reade had alleged that the assault took place in an alcove in the Senate building, but PBS found no semi-private places along the route where Reade says the incident took place. That area would have been public and busy, so staffers they talked to said that it would have been a brazen attack. Just to say, if it's the case that 68 women in Biden's office said nothing, we never felt this way, we never felt this uncomfortable, it doesn't mean that he didn't do it, but it does mean that he doesn't have a pattern of behavior of attacking his staff. And that is what predators tend to leave behind, is a trail of people who are traumatized, hurt, because that person has a certain MO. They have a certain need that they want to force another person to help them gratify, and they do it in a consistent way. And if you think about like the way that profilers talk about serial killers and trying to understand that when they engage in these actions, there's something they're trying to work out. There's something they're reliving, or there's some sort of psychological thing that's going on in there. And the same thing with predators. If you have a way that you get off, you're going to try to recreate those conditions in the same way. So it's not proof he didn't do it, but it's proof that he didn't do it to anyone else, even though he had a lot of staff and conceivably a lot of opportunities. So it's just not bolstering Reade's case. In terms of the alcove in the Senate building, yeah, there's a lot of problems people have raised about her description of the location, especially given the time period in 1993 when she described one area and she said, I came downstairs and looked across the way and Joe Biden was there. There's actually a massive statue there in the way, so she couldn't have seen him right away. She would have had to move off to the side. And there was also, in one of her accounts, she talked about the fact that when she came up to Joe Biden, allegedly, he was talking with someone else and then immediately tried to assault her. So there's just like, and people are like, well, where you're describing the assault took place, the Capitol Police is like literally across the way. They would have seen. So there's issues with a physical description in terms of like where she said, and I'm not saying she needs to know things exactly, but she should like remember, I think, like generally, be able to point out things. And if people can't find the things that she's described, it doesn't help her case. All right. Now, another one, this too, just, I read this and I was like, what? The Associated Press reports that one of Reade's key corroborators, an anonymous friend who worked in the U.S. Senate with Reade and described vomiting upon hearing the accusation, did not initially mention it in an interview last year. The AP writes that this friend, quote, confirmed Reade's original limited account of harassment by Biden. When Reade added her allegation in March this year, this friend also added those details to her own recollection, unquote. Here's the thing. Sadly, in my life, many people, as I've grown closer to them and dropped sort of social barriers and we've become close friends, have confided in me stories of abuse or assault. I've never vomited. I've never vomited upon hearing someone describe that because I am focusing on the other person, no matter how bad it. And it's just like, I don't know. Maybe this rings true to somebody else. Never have I had someone say I told my story and they vomited. And I'm going to be honest, in terms of the scope of things that could happen, describing what Tara Reade described, while awful, and if it happened would be criminal and would be a violation, it reminds me of what Jess Phillips went through when she said she was in a bar and someone stuck their hands down the front of her trousers and tried to whatever. That level of assault compared to what I know other people have, and again, I don't want to say this doesn't matter, but I'm saying to induce vomiting, this just seems disproportionate. It just doesn't map onto my experience of having listened to people talk about their stories, my reaction to people talking about their stories, and also the proportionality of being physically ill based on the description of what happened. I'm going to let you guys... the misremembering doesn't disqualify that from me. Yeah, I agree, but the thing is, she doesn't have to... here's the thing about the physical location. If you move the physical location entirely, that does become a problem. As opposed to saying, well, it might be here, it might be there. And also she had this really specific memory in the beginning. She had a gym bag and she was going to go meet him downstairs. So if there should be a place that looks like what she described, or a possibility for the kind of privacy that she described, if you see what I mean. But it's not like she misremembered where the underground train was, because it physically is only in one place. So Biden's office was on the second floor, the gym was on the first floor, and rather than meeting him on the first floor, she says that she went down into the basement to meet him as he was coming back on the train from underneath the Capitol. That's my understanding of it. And that can only happen in one place. So, all right. So let's see. The Associated Press. Okay. The Associated Press reports we did the vomiting thing. Okay. The Post earlier reported that Reade's brother had updated his corroboration. Initially, he told the Post he heard a different story that did not involve sexual assault, and days later texted to say Reade had told him Biden had cornered her and put his hands under her clothes. So this is it's a credibility issue when you change your story, and then all of your corroborators also happen to change their story in the exact same way that you've changed your story. It's not like she's not in communication with her brother or her friend. And she also phoned up a friend and reminded her that she'd been told about this event, even though Tara Reade told reporters she'd only told 3 people. And we're starting to quibble, and I think the quibbling is not worth it because it's the overarching things. All right. Reade said that she'd heard... Okay, and this is also dodgy AF. Reade's complaint, as we recall from her own writings, is that she heard that she had been... Reade has said she heard she was asked to serve drinks at a reception for Biden because Biden liked her legs. And when we mentioned this is hearsay, that was the staffer who made this comment, not Biden, and so it's the staffer who really should be held responsible, in my opinion, for the comment, because we don't know if Biden ever said that, or if it was a misunderstanding between the two of them, or whatever. Okay, going on with the article. Former staffers told PBS NewsHour that would not have happened. The staffers said that would have been inappropriately mixing office staff with campaign duties. That's technically true. The Hyde Act, the federal law, has a very clear line between doing work when you're paid by the government and not doing politically partisan campaign work. I was in 2000 looking for a job. I was going to pick up a part-time job working for the census. And because I worked for a Democratic state senator, they're like, there could maybe be problems with the Hatch Act, with the census, because it was during a campaign season or whatever, that they were going to be out there. So I can totally back that up about the not mixing and the Hatch Act and those kinds of things. The staffers also said that, and 2 staffers made the point of asking men to bring coffee because Biden didn't like the look of young female staffers doing it. So this is, again, not evidence, but it doesn't align with Tara Reade's account. Reade has given various reasons for her departure from Biden's office to reporters. And this also, to me, was a red flag before all of this stuff about her Medium post being edited came out. What was raising flags in my head was, in one account, she said she'd quit her job to go out west. In another version, she she resigned or was forced to resign. And in another version, she was fired. And I pointed out, you'd remember how you left a job. Like, that has nothing to do with the trauma around what happened to you. Because, we're talking about one event in a couple weeks, and then she went and she says she filed this report, and she continued to work there, and then she was terminated. So you can't blame the fuzziness of her understanding whether she decided to leave her job or she was fired on trauma. Just that doesn't come within the rubric of things that you can be excused for not remembering because of an event, in a specific time period. She'd recently been saying she was urged to quit in retaliation for the SA. Supervisors in Biden's office at the time have all denied receiving any such complaints about Biden. A colleague who worked closely with Reade at the time, Ben Savage, said he was under the impression Reade lost her job for poor performance, specifically in connection with sorting mail. Savage told the Post that Reade departed soon after he had complained to supervisors about her work. Savage also told the Washington Post that Reade just didn't seem to fit into the office culture, saying she was confronted for clothing choices by her supervisors. Savage told CNN that when Reade was finally let go, she said she thought she was being unfairly pushed out over a medical issue. So again, this gets all really dicey. Tara Reade, according to Ben's memory here, he was working with her on Constituent Post. And I can also, having worked in a legislative office, all of this sounds completely, and I was, okay. I started working in legislative offices in the state of Wisconsin around 1996. So this would have been, 3 years before I entered legislative office work. But I can tell you, constituent letters it's one of the things people spend a lot of time on. Communication with the constituents in the constituency is is an important part of that job. People want to feel that their representatives are hearing them and acknowledging their concerns and have a response for them. And so senators put a lot of emphasis on quick turnaround and letters that are able to communicate a position without ticking too many people off. So constituent mail is a huge issue, and a huge task, I should say. Ben Savage was an IT person. His job was to help organize the digital side of things. And Tara Reade's job was to read the mail, code it according to which issue it was, what rubric, sort of subject area it fell under, because the legislative staff, you're not a master of you're not a sort of, you don't master all topics. You work on economics and the environment and housing, or you work on, choice and other things. So everyone has their own specialties because you can't know everything about everything. And so a letter comes in, it gets coded. This is how it's supposed to work. The coded letter goes to the appropriate person who has the ability to write a response. That person writes a response. It gets approved by the chief of staff or whomever else is signing off on what actually, Biden is going to be on record saying. And then a photocopy, apparently, was made of the letter. So you had a copy of the response. And then the other one was sent back to the constituent because they were the ones who got the letter. Tara Reade apparently did not get a handle on the coding. She miscoded things a lot. Ben said he remembers because he ended up taking over the job from her and developing a new coding system based on something that was better for him. There was a name given in like Respond America, I can't remember. And then apparently the other big problem they had with her, according to the staff person who was working with her, is that she was throwing away the photocopies of the letters. So they were going through all of this work to write copies of to write these letters back to constituents and keep copies on file. So if the constituent wrote again, they could go, okay, in my letter dated June 1st, 1993, I talked to you about this, and now I'm following up with you again because this bill has been passed or this bill has been stalled or whatever else. And she was just throwing away the evidence, or not the evidence, the records. And she got in trouble for that. So that was, if that's the kind I can understand why that is actually harmful to the office just chalking out, like, why would you check out a photocopy? Anyway, and then, of course, at the time, she claimed to have a medical issue. Ben Savage has not said what that medical issue is because he didn't feel comfortable with it. But initially, she was saying, I'm getting pushed out because of this medical issue I had, according to him. So, okay, on Reade's past. The AP looked into Reade's childhood, and she has consistently said she was abused by her father. Her stepbrother questioned Reade's assertion that her father physically abused her, and Reade's writings that she was a standout skier who qualified for the Junior Olympics. And here's where we start to get into the pattern of Tara Reade's perception of the world, or what she wants the world to be, and then what the actual facts are. And this, if we look back into her life, this is a consistent pattern. So here we've got, basically, she's asserting that she was abused, and there's somebody, at least in her life, who's saying, I can't corroborate that. I actually, I'm questioning that. CNN and the AP reported on Reade's troubled relationship at the time she worked her Biden? What? I have to. CNN and the AP reported on Reade's troubled relationship at the time she worked. I guess it must be for Biden there. She eventually divorced her husband from that time, and she alleges he was abusive. In court records, the husband acknowledges one instance of violence against Reade, but denies others, and alleges she was conflating her past issues of abuse with their marriage. In court records, he did say, quote, she related a problem that she was having at work regarding sexual harassment in U.S. Senator Joe Biden's office. The document does not mention Biden specifically as the harasser, nor does it mention sexual assault. So, I guess, this is a sort of he said, she said. He's in a court document saying, yes, I put my hands up. There was a time I was violent, but I was not continuously violent. I'm not stalking my wife. Tara Reade got a temporary restraining order against her ex-husband and changed her name to Alexander McCabe. She claims to have had then graduated from the Antioch University under a protected program and became a visiting professor. And this is just complete BS. You don't graduate with a BA and get a job as a visiting professor, because professors have more than a PhD. Right? Professor is a title. It's not just sort of like a descriptor of what somebody does. It's actually a title of you have to earn. So I have a PhD and I have the title of doctor. I am not a professor because I have not been awarded the title of professor by like the faculty staff. Like it is a you have to do things. Like in Germany, if I want to get a professorship, I first have to do a step where I'd get a some kind of other degree. That's hard for me to pronounce. And then I become a doctor. And then after and then you have to publish so many articles, and you have to like teach whatever. You have to like do kind of like research-based things. And it's sort of similar in other, like you become like a senior lecturer in a British tracking system. And then you become like an associate professor. But then to be a professor, you have to go before your peers and bring all of your publications. And they have to review it. Like there's a process. So I just want to put this down. You don't get to call yourself a visiting professor if you do admin work at a university. All right, and maybe this is just like personally offensive to me, way more like you can't understand all this anger. But as someone who worked very hard for my PhD, I would never call myself a visiting professor. I've won funding to be a visiting scholar at Dundee University for 6 weeks this year. I don't call myself a visiting professor. Okay? And so this cosplaying at having things that she doesn't have is okay. So she said she became a visiting professor. The university denied all of this to CNN. It said there was never such a program for domestic violence victims, that she never graduated, nor was she a faculty member. And apparently what Tara Reade did provide was several hours of administrative work. Now, let me also just give you a little insight into how universities, at least with my experience in the UK, works. There are often times when there is a sort of a peer review system across universities. So just to make sure that your faculty don't live in a sort of bubble, you don't have a culture about norms when it comes to grading that are mismatched with other universities and other work being done at other universities, because the aim here is that you want a degree to be worth a degree. You don't want to be one degree worth have value and the other one be worthless. So what they will have is people who will come in from outside, actually hire them and say, have a look at these tests and tell us if you think that the grading is similar to what you would grade your essays at your institution. Here's a sample of essays written during the course for coursework. And why don't you check the marks on this to see if you think that they are in line with what you would give at your university. And it's a way to do that kind of external check. When you do that kind of work, you're not a visiting professor. You're just doing grading. And so if you do administrative work, that doesn't give you any titles or the right to use any titles or to misrepresent yourself and what you did. Politico reported later that in Reade's life, she, quote, left a trail of aggrieved acquaintances in California's Central Coast region who say they remember two things about her. She spoke favorably about her time working for Biden, and she left them feeling duped. Many of the stories were specifically related to rent payments, as Reade, then a single mother who said she was on the run from domestic violence. But was she really? Often struggled for money. I'm not saying that there wasn't an incident that was happening, but is there evidence that she was on the run from domestic violence? Is there, other than her claims? Did the ex-husband stalk her? Did she have to get out multiple restraining orders because he was calling her? Does she? No. She makes a claim. So something happens to her and she makes a claim, and then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally, for nearly a decade in California, Reade, and this is how Tara Reade destroyed her own life. She went out with the aim of blowing up Joe Biden's campaign, and she ended up blowing up her own life. And this is where her history of exaggerating and misrepresenting or reinventing her past that is not based in reality has tripped her up. So Reade worked as an expert on domestic violence whose testimony was used in courtroom prosecutions. The New York Times reports that as a result of questions about Reade's education, what did Reade? I looked at the New York Times story here, and so I might be out of New York Times articles, but the experience she claimed to have to justify her expertise is what? What? When I read it, it was like jaw-dropping, kind of like, I don't even believe this. All right, happily, I still have a couple articles left. Okay. Okay, yes. All right, he is leaving as her credibility, Tara Reade, is coming under harsh scrutiny. On Thursday in California, lawyers who had faced off against Reade in court began raising questions about the legitimacy of her testimony and the verdicts that followed after news reports that Antioch University had disputed her claim of receiving a bachelor's degree from its Seattle campus. Then known as Alexandra McCabe, Ms. Reade testified as a government witness in Montgomery County courts for nearly a decade, describing herself as an expert in the dynamics of domestic violence who had counseled hundreds of victims. The public defender's office in Montgomery County has begun scrutinizing cases involving Ms. Reade and compiling a list of clients who may have been affected by her testimony. I want to see her Yes, this is where we get down to the issue of her credibility and what she claims she has as background. Now, we all know a little bit about Tara Reade now, right? We know, for instance, that she worked in the mailroom of the Biden office where she coded letters for being forwarded to the appropriate member of staff. She was meant to make photocopies of the responses and keep them on file with the original letter. That was her job. Okay. And we also know that she didn't get a bachelor's degree from Antioch. She thinks she did, like in her head, but she applied to a law degree claiming she had a bachelor's degree. On the basis that she claimed she had a bachelor's degree, they let her enter a sort of master's law degree program when she didn't have that master's degree. The bachelor's degree. Okay, so Ms. Reade told the New York Times that she had obtained her degree through a protected program for victims of spousal abuse, which court records show she suffered at the hands of her ex-husbands in the mid-90s. That history, she said, caused her to change her name, leading to confusion about her status at the school. She later received a law degree from Seattle University, but an Antioch spokesperson, Karen Hamilton, told the Times that while Ms. Reade had attended classes, she was certain that Ms. Reade had not received a degree. In her 2018, in her testimony, this is sworn testimony before court, okay? Please let this sink in. People's lives are on the line here. And she's being called as an expert witness to help influence how the jurors perceive the events based on her claimed expertise. In her testimony in the 2018 trial, Ms. Reade was questioned about her degree by Mr. Soltzes. She testified she received a liberal arts degree, as was stated on her resume provided by the district attorney. The focus was political science, she said, according to the transcript. Ms. Reade also told the court that she was currently a substitute teacher, but had worked in domestic violence prevention for more than 2 decades and testified in more than 20 cases. Her career began, she said, in Mr. Biden's office. I was a legislative aide, she said, according to the testimony, the sworn testimony. He worked on the Violence Against Women Act, the federal act. So clearly what she's doing here is, one, she's misrepresenting her background. Staff assistants are not legislative aides. A legislative aide is a special title. And if you're working in the mailroom, you're not a legislative aide. And if you're working in the mailroom and you're writing and you're coordinating letters about the Violence Against Women Act, that's not working on the legislation. So I think there was one case where she talked about working on it. I don't know if they're going to have it here, but I did see that where she talks about working for Joe Biden and Leon Panetta. But she's clearly trying to link her experience with domestic abuse to her time in Biden's office when he was working on the Violence Against Women Act, when all she was doing was sorting letters. That experience does not qualify her to be an expert on domestic abuse. Staff lists published in 1993 show Ms. Reade listed as a staff assistant, a different position from the legislative assistant job she cited in her testimony. Both titles are common in congressional offices, with legislative assistant indicating a slightly more senior post that involves working on policy. And Tara would know that because she wouldn't have been a legislative assistant because she didn't do the duties of a legislative assistant. So she knew better because she worked there. In multiple interviews, Ms. Reade described her duties as managing the interns, never mentioning any direct work on the Violence Against Women Act. But she mentioned it when she linked herself to that bill when she was trying to establish expertise. In an interview, Mr. Soltzes described Ms. Reade as well-spoken and a good witness on the stand, and he said he was impressed by her experience with Mr. Biden. Experience that she didn't have. But both Mr. Soltzes and Scott Erdbacher, the lawyer for Ms. Vasquez, raised objections to Ms. Reade's testimony, according to the transcript, saying they were skeptical that her work experience qualified her as an expert. The judge overruled them. Now, Mr. Soltzes says he is exploring whether he can reopen his case. On Wednesday evening, he emailed a network of more than 100 public defenders alerting them to questions about Ms. Reade's background and credibility. Monique S. Hill, a lawyer in another domestic violence case in which Ms. Reade served as an expert witness, said she also saw grounds to challenge the conviction. Had I had the information that I have now, in this case in my mind would have gone differently, Ms. Hill said, who served as a public defender. I mean, that's of course what public defenders are always going to say, but you can't deny the point that Reade was not honest about her experience, which undermines her ability to be an expert. Is there anything else related to this? Ms. Reade maintains she has an undergraduate degree, saying the school has no record of her graduating because of a special arrangement put in place to protect her from her ex-husband. She sent the Times. Now, let me ask you something. You'd gone through graduation, or even, like, you don't even have to go through graduation. I have a copy of all my diplomas. I have a copy of my BA, I have a copy of my MA, and I have a copy of my PhD diplomas. You know why? Because employers ask for them. So, and the other thing too is if I ever lost my diploma, let's say I lost my master's degree, copy of my master's degree from Essex, I could request another copy. You know why? Because I actually earned my degree there. And so they will print me off another one. I'm just going to put that out there, right? She sent the Times a screenshot taken with her phone of a transcript showing her with 35 course credits, her department listed as BA completion, and nothing, repeat, nothing, listed under date conferred or degree conferred. According to the photo, she entered school on October 2nd, 2000. So, credits from her earlier studies at Pasadena City College were linked to her old social security number and name, the same one she now uses, making her worried that her ex-husband could find her, she says. To protect her identity, she received her degree through the private assistance of the school's then president. She said she never received a diploma or requested one since she was fast-tracked to law school. I'm like, do you really believe that if you... Okay, have you ever completed a program and never even requested a copy of your diploma? I mean, not aside from the one you get if you go to the graduation ceremony. Some people don't go to graduation. That's fine. But you still have a physical diploma, thing with a seal on it. You put it on a wall or you put it in a file in case anyone asks you for it. Do you believe that? Do you believe she would graduate from a program and then just never get a diploma and never request one? Okay. Ms. Hamilton, the Antioch spokesperson, told the Times that it had spoken with Ms. Murdoch and that there was no such special arrangement with Ms. Reade. It takes 180 credits to graduate, and students can earn up to a maximum of 45 for life experience or prior studies, according to the school's website. Seattle University School of Law confirmed that Ms. Reade graduated with a JD in 2004. The school only considers accepting students with bachelor's degree, according to its website, but it would not share what degree Ms. Reade presented with her initial application, citing federal privacy standards. Okay, that's fair. I also think that they probably just did not ask for a copy of the diploma, and she slid through the system. And I don't know how do you get, unless it's not asked for, and I also, it must not have been, maybe the law degree was asked for by the local county prosecutors. But if I don't know what the rules are at the university, if she lied on her application, does she still get to keep her degree? I mean, she technically did the work to earn the degree, but she lied and took a place that could have gone to somebody who had actually had their master's or had their bachelor's, who didn't lie about it. Lying in court is generally considered to be a crime, the Times goes on, though one that can be hard to prosecute. To be considered perjury, usually the false statement has to be a knowing lie, even if Ms. Reade was not found to have perjured herself. Exaggerating qualifications as an expert witness could be grounds for a reversal of a verdict. Quote, an expert can only testify in certain circumstances, unquote, said Mark L. Reichlel, a criminal defense lawyer based in Sacramento who formerly worked as a federal public defender. Quote, one of them is that they have expertise above the regular person. The jury is entitled to hear your qualifications, unquote. And we know she misrepresented her job title and, linking herself to Biden's work on the Violence Against Women Act. And now, because of her lies, cases are going to be reopened. The whole justice system, there's a bunch of people who are going to start filing appeals, and witnesses are going to have to get stuff with victims and people who are accused. I mean, two of the people she actually testified against, two women, I think, who were like attacked a guy because they found him cheating or something. I'm so torn on just that aspect alone. Just the fact that she messed up these court cases. Take everything else aside, right? Let's just think about this. I guess, am I happy that she tried to take down Joe Biden and ended up exposing herself as a fraud who's cosplaying at being an expert witness on something she's actually not an expert on, and misrepresenting her credentials to make it look like she's got a background she doesn't have? Is it good that came out? Has there been injustice done because of her fake expert witness duties? Or, and maybe it's not an either or case, but, and maybe some people, were guilty, and now she's part of this trial. She misrepresented her background, her credentials, her expertise. And now somebody who is guilty is going to have another shot at the apple. And the victim is going to have to go through all of this again because Tara Reade messed up. Like, aside from the whole accusations thing, she's trash. She's trash. To jeopardize justice in that way so she could cosplay as an expert on the stand and feel good about herself? Please. Please. Yeah, she's potentially hurt a lot of people. And I do hope she has consequences, because other people have to live with the consequences of her lying on the stand and her misrepresenting her position in Biden's office and her link to the Violence Against Women Act work when it was being drafted in Congress. It looks like she lied to get into law school. It looks like she really exaggerated the threat her ex-husband posed to her. If she was going to school in 2000, and there was the event that happened in the mid-90s. So, lying about your qualifications will always hurt others more than it does you. Agreed. Absolutely. And so now my understanding of her is also filtered through this anger I have at her as being exposed as this con woman. I mean, you can have, I know there's a sort of she said on the horse defrauding, and there's a whole bunch of he said, she says, or she said, she says on the rent payments. I know people, honestly, I think at some point one person raised a point when, how can you be poor if you have enough money to keep a horse? At some point in her life, she was keeping horses. I hope she wasn't bailing on rent payments when she was making a horse payment instead. But all of those things aside, let's just toss all that out. Let's just look at the potential consequence that her behavior has had in these criminal cases. Just because she wanted to be an expert doesn't mean she was one. All right. Let's see. And a poll in early May by Monmouth, University showed Americans are split on who to believe. This was taken before the steady drip of reporting that raised questions about Reade's credibility. Honestly, there was more media given to the initial allegations and the pressure on why isn't Biden opening up his files than there has been ever since. I think most people would not be aware of this level of detail of Tara Reade's life, and I didn't want it either, but I got kind of dragged into it. Okay, so yes, all of this drops. Politico drops this thing about how she has this habit of moving in with people or renting places, and then talking about how she's on the run as a domestic abuse victim, that she's got this daughter, she's a single mom, and they give her a place to stay because they feel bad for her, and then she's like, oh, I can't pay my rent. Oh, can I borrow some money? One time it was described, and again, this is a she said, so take it for what it's worth. A woman, in talking to Politico, said she'd asked to borrow like $200, and the woman agreed. And then Tara was on her way over. But on her way over, Tara texted to say, oh, well, that's great. Can I have $350 instead? And showed up, like, instead of looking for $200. Like, oh, but I asked you for $350. So that came out, her lying on the stand. And I'm not even going to say allegedly. She lied under oath in criminal cases multiple times. Then suddenly, her Me Too lawyer drops her. Remember at the beginning of the show, we were saying he spent more time explaining why he hadn't dropped her as a client than explaining why he had? Well, all that does is it leaves a big vacuum for people to speculate inside of. Why did he drop her? And people are like, because she's going to get sued? Because she's in big legal trouble? Because this case went from this Me Too lawyer just railing against Joe Biden to actually having to defend a client in a, on her potentially criminal violations and but messing up court cases. And when, you know what? And this is my speculation entirely, 100% my speculation. I think the attorney saw the Tara Reade case and thought, oh, I can send out a press release once or twice a week beating up on Joe Biden. That's fine for the amount of publicity I will get having my name in the paper. And I'll be able to keep my Me Too credentials because, I'm not taking a partisan side here. But even though I've given money to Trump, I think this guy was a Trump donor, this attorney. I guess I should probably make sure I should get that right. Where's the name of her attorney? Come on. Yeah, Douglas. Yes, Douglas Wignor. Let's have a look at him. I don't want to slander him unfairly. And donated. Oh, donations. Yeah. Okay. And can I also? All right. Let's just search that. Yeah, he's a Trump donor. Okay, I'm not misremembering this. I'm not saying that an attorney can't do a good job based on who they're donating to. I think you are able to have your personal, especially attorneys, are able to have their own personal opinions, but make whatever legal arguments they need to make in court to win for their client. I don't think because he donated to Trump, he's going to be in the pocket of Trump. But that said, the fact that he gave $55,000, was it? How much did I see? $55,000 in campaign contributions to Donald Trump. Yeah, like beating up on Joe Biden. If you're a Trump supporter and you're financially backing him, then it's easy work for you to just put out a press release beating up on Joe Biden a couple times a week. But when her credibility got tanked and she got involved with this, he just dropped her like a bad habit, just walked away. A Me Too lawyer that donates to Trump, seriously? Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, they'll take any job. Like some lawyers are principled lawyers. Other people will just take jobs, And you can be a good lawyer and not believe a word you say. So it's probably why I didn't end up being an attorney. Right. So, yes, this is the guy, Douglas Widger. I guess this was an updated version as her lawyer quit. But he basically wrote this big press release saying, I believe her and blah, blah, blah. She's a victim, yada, yada, yada. And that's that's not actually even all of kind of where we are. I guess this is going to be the Tara Reade hour because I'm already going for an hour. And I think by the time I finish all of this, we won't really have time for other stuff. But as this was all happening in the news sphere, there was also happenings and movements on the Twitter sphere. A lot of people decided, a lot of people who were like, Tara Reade, this is terrible, me too, I believe her, take down, we need to destroy Biden needs to resign, we need to, Bernie was the last candidate standing, so Bernie should become our default nominee because Bernie was the one who was the last person to drop out before Biden, and Biden isn't qualified because of Tara Reade, so let's just install Bernie. Because that's not blatantly political. You know, that's not harnessing and weaponizing Me Too to accomplish through an overthrow what you could not accomplish democratically at the ballot box. I'm being sarcastic. But, oh my gosh, yeah. Let's, Ryan Grimm, Nate Robinson, Sean King, Katie Halper, whole bunch of people started deleting their Tara Reade tweets, started purging their timeline of, actually I'll just put, and Boolean search. Read. Yeah, Peter Dow, Sean King, Ryan Grimm are deleting their Tara Reade tweets. Ryan Grimm especially got in a fight with, can't remember her name now, Nara Tandon, I think. I'm pronouncing that right. And then they had a bit of like they had a big fight on Twitter, and then they called each other and talked it out, and he like deleted a bunch of her tweets. Yeah, a whole bunch of people are starting to delete out their prior tweets on Tara Reade. So she's just kind of like losing support left and right. And perhaps most importantly, you know, there have been people who stood by her from the start. And I genuinely feel bad for those people because they extended her their trust. When someone comes, like when these sorts of things happen, you know, with Christine Ford and other people who come forward with accusations, there's kind of an unspoken relationship that happens. The victims, on their part, I kind of perceive it as they show the bravery of coming forward and telling the truth to the best of their recollection, for justice for themselves and also potentially for justice for other victims who might not have the courage or the ability. I'm not saying that people are weak, but they might not be well placed or best placed to make themselves nationally vulnerable and a target in that way. And then our side of it is Me Too is to listen to those allegations and take them seriously. And also, I think, to investigate them for credibility. And when we find they are credible, and credibly accused somehow disappeared as a phrase since 2017. I don't know where credibly accused went. Credibly accused priests was a big thing in 2018, 2019. But somehow credibly accused got dropped and believe all women somehow persisted. But they come forward and we look at it and say, yes, when it comes to he said, she said, or he said, or she said, she said, or whatever the dynamics are, they said, we're going to look at the accounts, we're going to look at what you say happened and the details you have around it, and then when we believe you, we have your back. And that means being an advocate for you, explaining why you are a credible person, explaining, it's like what the stuff I do with Ford, with Christine Blasey Ford. To this day, I have her back. I totally have her back on that. And I will continue to repeat, she had sworn testimony, sworn affidavits from 4 individuals that she came with receipts already. She volunteered for a lie detector. Think what you want. It was symbolic in terms of her being willing to put herself under scrutiny. She released her original notes and she testified under oath, under penalty of perjury. And also, Kavanaugh had it wasn't like it was a one-off with Kavanaugh. Other women came forward from his university days and said, this happened to me too. So yeah, I have Dr. Ford's back, and I will for as long as I have breath, because in honesty, this party she described is described in Brett Kavanaugh's calendars, the ones that he thought was gonna be exonerating him. There's like a day in July that actually is like, she said it was a weekday, not a weekend. There's a weekend where he has a party. She names some of the people who are at the party. The people she names at the party are listed as people in the diary for that day. She said they were drinking. The entry says brewskis. So is it just a coincidence that his record happens to match on a memory she made up? She couldn't have access to his schedule. She couldn't know those names were in there. So yeah, I have Dr. Ford's back. And so there is but that is built on trusting that the victim's being honest. They don't have to be a perfect person in the past, but they have to be honest about what they're saying now. And maybe you saw this. Kate Mann was rather controversially, I guess, she took a side. Joe Walsh at The Nation took one side. Kate Mann took another. And this happened yesterday. I'm just going to read it out. I follow Kate. Kate follows me back. I told her in response to this, I came to this conclusion sooner than you, but I'm glad I got there. I'm glad you got there. Sorry, I'm glad you got there. So I'm just going to read her. Is that it? Nope, there's a whole thread. All right. This is Kate Mann yesterday, who had been like, yeah, I believe Tara Reade. You got to back her. Not only that, Biden should withdraw from the race. We can't have somebody who is an alleged predator at the top of the ticket. So he needs to go. She took a bold public position early on. Okay. Now she writes, in a piece for The Nation a few weeks ago, I wrote that, quote, Reade's testimony is evidence that the SA occurred, though there remains room to disagree on its strength or probative value, unquote. There's also room to change one's mind when new evidence comes to light. She goes on, in light of recent evidence that raises serious doubts about Reade's credibility, I no longer feel sure of what or whom to believe. And though I am sure nobody is awaiting my revised credence, with bated breath, and it will anger many people, I wanted to be forthcoming on this. I stand by my original assessment of the evidence given the facts to hand at the time, and the strong moral and epistemic presumption in favor of believing women. I stand by my original claim that Joe Biden has behaved in seriously creepy, disturbing ways toward women, and my dismay that he is the presumptive Democratic Party nominee. But I no longer think he should step aside, and I apologize for having said he ought to in print. Many people I respect have come down on numerous sides of this pointy issue. I don't plan on saying anything further about it for now, and I urge you to not participate in the culture of blaming and shaming sexual assault SA victims and holding them up for unfair scrutiny. We'll talk about this in a second, because anytime you make an accusation, you're going to open yourself up for scrutiny, and you need to be prepared for that before you make the accusation, not after. But we'll talk about that in a bit. But it would be disingenuous for me to not publicly acknowledge that there are far more serious problems with Reade's word than is typically the case with victims, who, of course, do not have to be perfect, but do have to be credible. So, in short, I've changed my mind, and I apologize, and I've said what I currently have to say, so please don't at me. Kate Mann, doing a 180. Doing a complete 180. And generally, people are, pretty cool. Not Sally Albright, she's not very forgiving, but the feminist next door, and also I wrote her as well saying, because I know what it's like I see how women are treated in the media, how mercilessly, far more than men. And so the thing is, when someone gets to the point where they agree with you, or they've come to the same conclusion you've come to, at that point, for me, it's more important that we focus on what we agree on than me dragging you about what you said in the past or why you were wrong. As a general principle, there might be specific people that I wouldn't do that for, but yeah. So Ryan Grimm's purging his timeline of her. Kate Mann is retracting her strong support of her. Tara Reade has been exposed as potentially having interfered with the justice process in multiple court cases because she misrepresented, exaggerated, lied about her experience in a professional setting, either as a legislative aide or as a visiting professor. I'm sorry, I can't even tell you how much that sticks in my craw. I can't even tell you how much that, I mean, there's a whole thing of, oh, my dad's awake. I may call to him afterwards. Yeah, I mean, obviously the whole, like, being accused of doing an essay that you haven't done, Biden's got, obviously, if that's the case, he's got way more justification, but that bothers me, that she tried to pass herself off as a visiting professor when all she did was some admin work. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much, is one other thing. All right, I'm going to close with this, and this is like trash. This is like dramas with a Z. This is lowbrow. This is, let's put this in a different category of the kind of court case stuff that she has to do. But, freaking Tara Reade. Someone that I follow on Twitter sent out an email, or not, I'm sorry, I'm trying to think and read and click and stuff and I can't multitask and be coherent. Someone I follow on Twitter was being reported by Tara Reade, and not only kind of like reported by Tara Reade, but so Tara Reade was doing this in a very strange way. So where can I find my own freaking account? I think that's my profile. I just want to go to my main account. How do I go to my main account? I feel like such a boomer, but it's like nothing is labeled. Okay, there we go. I thought I hit that before. No, that's not my profile. Is this my profile or is that my account settings? And when you highlight on it, there's no shortcut key. So freaking useless. All right. Okay, finally, if I go to the thing and then I click on the picture, if I click on my picture in a tweet, it'll take me to my profile page. But if I just click on the picture, which is the same freaking thing, which should take me to my profile page on the sidebar, won't go there. Thank you, Twitter. If you're going to have like a homogeneous image, have it do the same thing over and over no matter where it lands. That way I don't have to think. I don't want to come to your website and think about you. I want to think about the stuff on your website. Sorry, I'm channeling a lot of frustration today. All right. Tweets and replies. That's what I'm looking for. And my voice gets sing-songy when I am thinking and multitasking. All right. So this is what she does. All right. So Tara Reade is problematic AF and needs to stop reporting me to Twitter. She spends way too much time reporting me, another writer, and others who researched and did fact checks on her. To me, this just proves she did all this for attention and accolades from John Cusack. All right, so this is what Tara Reade is doing. She is doing screenshots, we can go look at the account, of people's tweets. And then on her public account, she's taking those screenshots with the names of the people that, clearly visible, and @ing Twitter support. Now, if you've been on Twitter at any amount of time and have had problems, you know that that is not how you file a report on Twitter. You do not complain about, let's just have she hasn't blocked me yet, so let's go have a look at Miss Tara Reade. This is, again, from someone who's supposed to be an attorney, or no, she's not supposed to be an attorney. Sorry, she has a law school degree. She has a JD. Yeah, I reported a bunch of her tweets for harassment because this is BS, and I'll say it. I'll own it because this is nonsense. But yeah, so what she does is, instead of reporting somebody, and I do think this is targeted harassment because she knows what she's doing. Here is a picture of, I guess, a DM she got. If you've gotten a bad DM, and I've gotten harassing DMs, surprise, feminist on YouTube, is getting insults and gendered slurs and false accusations leveled at me in my DMs. You know, there's a report conversation button that you can go ahead and just hit that right there, because that is how you report a DM that violates the TOS. That's how you handle it. And you would think someone with a law degree who read the terms of service contract and can read report conversation would know how to report a conversation. But Tara Reade, Miss I don't want to be harassed, is deliberately putting this information on her timeline and tagging at Twitter support as a cover in order to induce the people who follow her to harass the people she's tweeting about. Don't you think somebody who's been made a victim should have a little more empathy in this way? Oh, and did I mention that she's like, people who have talked about their experiences with Tara Reade, she is threatening to sue them, and she's sending them cease and desist orders. So she complains when Joe Biden, doesn't acknowledge her stuff and doesn't want to cooperate, but she's being silenced. But when people come up with their experiences of her, oh, no, now it's a cease and desist order, or cease and desist letter. Not an order, it was a letter. And she isn't, it's not like one person. She's done this. Look at this. And the other thing too, and this is not, girl, learn how to do a screen, like control print screen on your desktop. Just hit the control button and don't take a picture of your screen with your phone and then upload that. And even if you do, take a better freaking picture. These are trash. Tara, what you thinking? What are you thinking? So, yeah, here it is. She sent this out. Yes, it is. Should you take this one and investigate at K-Hive Queen Bee or someone else, or should I? And then it's just here somebody was replying to the Biden Brigade. Then how about working as a behavioral therapist as stated in her bio without holding a license or an MA or a LPC in a counseling field? My understanding is she only has a law degree. And then Team Lynn down here says, this is some highly inappropriate S for Tara to be doing. And, and she's taken a picture. There's nothing in here that's even tagging Tara Reade into this. I'm trying to see. Her name is nowhere. These are just people online having a conversation about Tara Reade. And she's taken a picture of it and with the thing at Twitter support and posted on her timeline for her. How many thousands of fans or followers does she have now? 82,000 followers. So you're going to lecture other people about how you're being treated online? I mean, you're basically like, it's not even worth reporting these tweets. There's nothing in there that violates the TOS. And this kind of gets back again to the pattern. If we think about the reporting earlier, Tara Reade went to Time's Up with her Biden story, asking for help, asking for money for a PR firm and to help with an attorney. And what did she want help with? Was it to sue Joe Biden? No, she said she was never going to sue Joe Biden to Time's Up. What she wanted was help with people who were calling her a Russian agent on Twitter. That's what she needed. She needed Time's Up to spend their money raised for people who have allegations they want to bring forward. And she wanted them to pay for her PR work, suing people who were saying nasty things about her on Twitter. So, all right, let's have a little bit of a wrap up then. I guess this is a whole hour has been Tara Reade. I'm going to have to end up, or an hour and a half. It's going to have to end up being changing the title, which I guess we did kind of get to my bookmark, so I didn't lie, but this wasn't what I had in mind. I guess, it wasn't what I had in mind for my bookmark. I'm trying to find my, people are always going to be flawed. People are always going to be flawed, and people who don't tell the truth can be victims. People who have, and I'm not saying this is Tara Reade's problem, but, people who are pathological liars or compulsive liars can be victims. Being a liar, being on record as a fraudster or a con artist, or presenting your entire life in a way to make yourself look like the maximal victim possible, whether or not that's backed up by the evidence, doesn't mean you can't be assaulted, doesn't mean you can't be attacked. There is also the reality that Me Too, the whole point of Me Too, not the whole point, all right? Me Too wasn't even started by me. So I go back to the credit of the Black women who started it. But in the Me Too iteration that evolved after 2017, kind of in reaction, a more cultural appropriation, which is what it was, of a movement, because it resonated with a lot of women at the time, more so than I guess it had previously. And I think Trump's election had a lot to do with that. The thing was, when women came forward, and I'm just going to say women, but I don't want to, and I know that language is exclusionary, so let me just acknowledge NB, trans men, men, trans people. I'm not just talking about cis women, although cis women tend to disproportionately be the persons who come forward with the accusations. There is the Kevin Spacey case. There are other cases of people who are not cis women being attacked. So stipulated. But when it's particularly women, like cis women, cis-het women who come forward, I'm saying lesbians can't be SA'd, but again, in those situations, we've had before Me Too, women were immediately, they had their sexual histories questioned. They were called gold diggers, and they were called mentally unstable. So, if you were violated by, let's say in a typical case, a man, suddenly his sexual history is not the issue. Your sexual history is the issue. And the fact that, you were drinking, doesn't become framed as he was seeking out, in part of his predatory behavior was seeking out potentially vulnerable victims by preying on women who had been drinking. You are just a drunk. You were putting yourself in a dangerous situation. I'm not saying those things don't happen pre-Me Too, but this was the media framing more so. And then the last thing was, she's after his money. She's going to make a false accusation, and so she can get paid off because it's an easy way. So it was really all of the critiques available at the time in the culture were still aligned with patriarchy, still aligned with misogyny, still aligned with this idea that women who had sex were somehow then open property, and if they were violated, it didn't really count because they were damaged goods. The way that especially like sex workers are vulnerable, because they're, if they withdraw consent and they find themselves in a situation where they are violated, it's, the person can say, oh, well, she just gives sex every day for money, so it was, she's lying. And that has changed. I really do feel that has changed because, all right, it's not perfect, but it's better. All right, we can always get better. But, and I've come out and I've condemned the people who have tried to dismiss Tara Reade as being in love with Putin. I've said I don't think that that's helpful. I think it hurts Me Too, and it doesn't help Biden. It just generally hurts women. And I think that there are also people who are, without substantiation, speculating on her mental perspectives or her mental state. And I'm sure that currently right now Tara Reade is traumatized. I'm sure emotionally she's overwhelmed because, in terms of empathy, she's being dragged across the national stage, and not only is she not like sort of reputational issues, she might lose her degree. She's going to be caught up in these legal issues now for the better part of a couple years of her life. She is now looking at potentially criminal prosecution And she's definitely lost that gig she's had as an expert. Like that thing about her credibility where, clearly it was a part of her identity was to be this expert witness on behalf of domestic violence survivors or cases. She's ruined that too. And I just think if I were in her situation, I would be overwrought. I mean, she's brought it on herself. She didn't get any of this when she just came forward with her last story in April. In fact, her April story that ran in the California paper, Vox came out and they said they wouldn't run with it because they couldn't corroborate it. The AP looked into this and they wouldn't run with it. The Washington Post looked into Tara Reade last year and gave a pass on it. And it took people who don't have journalistic standards, like Ryan Grimm and Katie Halper and Nate Robinson. I don't think Sean King is a journalist, otherwise I'd list him. Peter Dow, whoever else were her cheerleaders, who harnessed this in order to make the case that Biden was unfit, should drop out of the race. Oh, and by the way, we should make Bernie his replacement without having any elections. We'll just do it at the convention. We'll just coronate him at the convention. They didn't do her any favors by letting her story get out there when, in a lot of ways, when we look back on this now, those newspapers were protecting her. Those journalistic standards were, I know Tara Reade, if you read the interview of people she's talked to, especially people she's talked to on a number of occasions, when she said, I'm shopping the story around and I'm talking to this person and you better run it now because I'm talking to this person. She was trying to kind of pit various media outlets against each other for her story, while then later saying that the media was shutting her down. Why? But Vox protected her. AP protected her. The Washington Post protected her. And Tara Reade decided to blow through all of those people who are actually doing her a massive favor. And I say that now with a lot of ambivalence, in that I'm sad to see her going through what she's going through. On the other hand, I'm really glad she was exposed as a fake expert. I'm really glad that I know initially there's going to be a lot of disruption, but I can only think of how much potential harm legally could have been done had she not been outed as not qualified to be an expert. So it's just very difficult. When does credibility, in the absence of clear evidence, in the absence of multiple credible witness or accounts coming forward, and this is the other thing about the case, right? The way that it's set apart from Me Too. No one else has come forward in the weeks since her allegation. And in the Me Too pattern, I'm not saying that itself is definitive. However, it does mark it apart as unusual when we're talking about holding predators accountable for their behavior. And I see the Lucky Wanderer says, you can't be angry at her lack of technology. She's even more a boomer than you. Yeah, fair enough. All right, we need some good news to close on. All right, fair enough. I understand. Let's just change this energy up a little bit. Look, Tara Reade's messed up her life. Big time. Big time. And whatever is going to happen to her, I can tell you it's not going to happen, barring a complete revelation from a new source with more documentation than you can shake a stick at. I don't even know why you'd want to shake a stick at things. Like, it seems to me you can shake a stick at a lot of things. Anyway. I think I did... Oh, yes! This is a good one. All right. Now, I am also going to say, this next video, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to keep it on small because people who zoom in too much drive me crazy. Can I just give a little bit of mobile phone video recording advice? Just do a wide shot. Just do a simple wide shot. If you're going to zoom in the tiniest amount, because the more you zoom in, little movements become big movements. And with a wide shot, and also just like vertical, don't film like this, film like this. You don't want vertical video syndrome unless you're going for it. Right? Don't film the, no, this way. Wide shot, a little bit of zoom if you need to, and then crop the video afterwards. All right. So anyway, nature is healing. And can we watch a Scotsman with ADHD cook a French onion soup? I don't have that tweet. Okay. So here we go. Nature is healing. The bear ports. Get it? The bear ports are open. The bear's like, what is, maybe there's some food up here. What is this stuff? And this is why I was saying about the video. I hope it doesn't give you motion sickness. It's also why I made the point about y'all, people just do a wide angle shot, crop it, and stabilizer. Just put a stabilizer on it, crop it, and then put the video up. But yeah, this bear went all the way to the top. So that was cute. What else have we got? Oh, we got that. Oh yeah, this. I love this idea. I mean, I'm gonna let this loop for a bit because as I was watching this, I was thinking, how is the cat so chilled out? I mean, maybe it's on drugs, but I don't think so. I think, this is my working theory, that having all these baby chicks is like having a constant little tiny massage. So that's why the cat is all like, no, I'm just going to lay here. No, just walk all over me. Because think about little baby chicks, right? They're furry. They keep all the heat, warm, and then they're all bundled together, right? So all their body heat would be like the fuzziest blanket ever. And then they have all their little feety feets that are standing on the fur. And so it would be like getting massaged. It would be like getting massaged by a warm, fuzzy, cheapy blanket. And I just love that. I love this. I love this little video clip. And the cat is obviously loving it as well. He's not going anywhere. I'm not going to eat these things. They're making me happy. I'm just going to lie here and enjoy it. It's the best. And I agree. If I were that cat, I can feel your energy. I see where you're coming from. Bearing. Yes, lovely. A much nicer bearing. A much less racist, misogynistic, lying, pathologically lying. Oh, this is kind of cool. I was going to do this for the happy hour, but I think we'll end on this. In case you've not seen it, not too many people have, at least not from this account. So yes, what we are about to watch here is a 420 get it, 420 kilogram Japanese shell that is the world's largest single firework. So as you can see, it is freaking huge. I mean, that just looks like the size of the bell thingy that you put in a bell tower. I mean, it's freaking huge, and it's over 200 kilograms. And they're going to shoot that up in the sky and let it explode. And we're going to see what it looks like. And that'll be the end. Oh, I see. Hold on. Oh, no. Wait. Okay, hold on. There's a problem. Well, it's not really a problem. But I just realized that I'm going to be in the way. My picture is going to be in the way of the firework. So I am going to minimize, make a little mini-me in the corner here. Slide it back up. There we go. I'm tiny in the corner now. I don't speak in a higher voice because I'm tiny. Christy, you're an idiot. Okay. All right, let's go back a little bit because we want to get the full effect. All right. Of this massive firework. So big. So there you go. Setting it all up, and here it goes. Boom. Here it comes. Oh, that's not it. Oh, that's not it. That's it. That is it. I like the camera work, by the way, having the two silhouettes here in the front. It gives it a really nice contrast. I don't know if you want to see that again. I know I do. Oh, yeah, so that's the first part of it. So there's like multiple layers and little ones that get a chain of explosions. But yeah, let's just watch that one more time. And also, yeah, look at this nice framing. So initially, you don't see the couple that stood in front. But the benefit of this for the shot is that it really gives you a sense of the perspective after you've enjoyed the fireworks. So really, like, top-notch work on this. So yeah, here's the couple on the bottom, and I just think that the framing there is the way that they're sort of revealed, the contrast against the light, and they stay in the shadow, and they have the light in front of them. Sorry. I was watching. What was I watching? Oh, I was watching an episode of Poirot. More recent Poirot. Old school Hercule Poirot with David Suchet is really typical. There's not a lot of camera work in it that takes you out. There's a lot of two shots and just sort of simple scene placement. The camera just sits there while people talk, because Poirot is going to be 90% exposition in terms of how information is delivered to the audience. There's some given with a da 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 music in the background. You get some visuals, but the more closer in time we get to the modern period, they start to use more fancy camera work. And there was one I was watching recently that included two people interviewing a woman, and in the initial scene you just see I'm just gonna be like a medium shot, looking at a window, and the dialogue starts and from the first man, not Poirot's character, but the first man begins his dialogue, and as he does, he leans forward, and so he comes into the shot in profile, and so that you've got him sort of up front here talking and asking a question, and they cut to the woman on the other side of the table, so you see like a straight on shot from her perspective, like she's looking, and then they cut back to that side shot where the guy now is in profile, and then Poirot starts to talk, and he leans forward, but he leans forward in such a way that his profile is still is not covering up the first guy's profile, so you just get both of them, and then they pull focus on to Poirot from the first guy in order to put the second guy in a slightly fuzzy backdrop, this kind of softer, gauzy kind of look, while they sharpen up on Poirot. And I just looked, and again, this is I know this is a really random tangent. This is Christy babbling at the end of the show, but for some reason, I got really pulled out of the storyline when I noticed the camera work, because it kind of took my attention away from what they were saying, and it put more of the focus on what I was looking at and what they were doing to create the effect. And maybe that's because I've been doing videos for a while, maybe a normie. No, I don't want to use that term. Someone who doesn't give a crap about camera stuff or film stuff, they just want to watch it. Maybe they wouldn't be taken out of it. But I very much was thinking, okay, so this is how they must have done the shot, how they set it up, and how they timed it and rehearsed it, and how they practiced the, pulling focus and all of that. And I can't decide if that kind of stuff I like more. Do I like that in a show that it challenges me not only on a sort of entertainment level, but also gives me something to think about on a technical and creative level? Or is it really just pulling me out of the story? Is it really just taking focus away from the characters and putting it on the director? And what should you do in this situation? So, hashtag not all Australians. Absolutely, Lonely Wolf. I will not judge your entire country based on one twat. Cat was poorly adapted for film. Oh man, yeah, because the camera motion distracted from the choreography. It does seem to me that the conceptualization of how to translate a Broadway musical that isn't just done on stage was a difficulty for Cats. At least with Hamilton, you're just going to get the Broadway performance. You're just going to get a camera at different parts of it, which means you will get a better view than if you were in the original Broadway cast audience. But they're not going to pretend it's not a Broadway play. And I kind of wonder if maybe Cats wouldn't have benefited from that, because one of the things people who've seen Cats who didn't like the film said was that you couldn't get a scope of like the production numbers, the dance numbers in the film the way you could on stage. And then there's some weird CGI with like cats floating on the air or whatever. I don't know, but I probably will not spend any of my life watching Cats. Maybe if I'm on a plane somewhere and I want to go to sleep, but other than that, I will probably avoid that film for the rest of my life. Yeah, pretty sure. All right. Wow, we did 2 hours. I always think I'm not going to be able to fill 2 hours. And this time I did it without a break. So maybe it's because I have now my cold coffee. I still have my tomato juice. And I can't actually hold. I need a third hand to hold all of the drinks that have been sat here in front of me for the last 2 hours. But people, I appreciate you guys stopping by. It's nice to have an audience for my ramblings. And I appreciate the comments you make in the chat stopping by. Sorry for the violent, sexy dancing there, by the way. I guess also I can two-camera this bit. Yeah, so thank you again very much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you putting up with my views and giving me your feedback. And I think then, really, until next time. Okay, so if you are looking for something like some nice podcasting background noise to fall asleep to, I probably can recommend the D&D series. I'm not saying that it's so boring you'll fall asleep, but the D&D stuff that we do, it's a pretty good, I think, adventure. And yeah, so if you're looking for something weird to try out, you might want to try that out. Otherwise, I did hear from Kevin today, but we've not made any plans for a happy hour. I'm sure in the next 2 or 3 we'll do another live show. And Wednesday is the big the high level one-off fight, where in the D&D campaign we do on Wednesday nights, which might be coming to a close because the lockdowns are sort of ending now, and they were a lockdown event, but we wanted to just play high-level characters and blow lots of things up. So as a consequence, we're all going to be like 16th level characters, and we're going to have lots of cool things to try, which you don't normally get to when you start off as like a 1st or 3rd level character, and you have to work your way up because it takes for freaking ever. And so anyway, yeah, so happy hour coming up this week. More D&D. I have my patron hangout on the Sunday, even though I'm not really asking for money anymore, and people don't necessarily even have to give money to be part of the group. They just got left in. Yeah, I was actually thinking about creating a pub quiz for next Sunday. So unlike just, sort of sitting around talking about the weather and stuff, we will have a quiz, but it won't be one that will be just from the YouTubes. I was thinking about making one like having a S-Lord category. Again, I'm trying really hard not to get this content demonetized. So there will be questions about like Sargon and Bering and stuff, which you're definitely not going to get in a regular pub quiz. So I'm thinking about doing that for the next patron hangout on Sunday. So that's my next week coming up, and of course next Sunday, Weekend Winters. So until next time, everybody, thank you so much for stopping by, and again, your time and attention. I've been Christy. People in the chats, you awesomes. People watching later, you awesomes too. I never did actually do the full transition. This is what I was setting up. So you can see me, big me. It's not just little me. Big me, big me. That's little tiny Christy. Big Christy. I was saying goodbye. Goodbye. That's not my normal line. Thank you. I was Christy. You're awesome. See you next time. And have a great week. That's better. Okay, now.